Hi everyone, I'm America Josh and welcome to our chats with Travel Josh Engstrom from Liberty Travel. G'day Josh, how are you today?
G'day. Hey everyone.
Where are you coming to us now? Where are you right now in the...
At the moment, I'm in a tiny little town called Bullhead City, Arizona. I've decided to have a bit of R&R from New York quarantine. So I am out in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of nowhere. That's right.
Awesome. Love it. Josh, we're going to start with Australian government. We're getting a lot of questions. I know you've had a lot of questions around what support's available if people are having trouble getting home, if they're stuck. So what's out there, what's being offered, and where can I find out some more information?
Yeah, that's great. So we've got a bit of good news about this, Josh. So last week, Marissa Payne, I believe her name is, the government minister, she released some government support that is available to Australians overseas that need help to come home. So this is a good development that the Australian government is doing, and it's for people that I believe are struggling with the expense of getting home and also the expense of quarantine. So the government has made a site where people can go and get some more information, but also then apply to get some financial assistance for the repatriation. I've got a link for that in this week's blog.
Okay, good advice. And yeah, as you said, we'll put it at americajosh.com/traveljosh, where you write an article every week with sort of elaborating on what we talk about here and with a bunch of links, which is really important that we make sure we get out the Smart Traveller and all those other kind of information that people get from reliable resources.
It's a really good decision that they've made to help people that are actually struggling. So if you're struggling, I definitely recommend sticking your hand up and asking for help, because nothing's going to happen if you don't do anything. It's just going to stay the same.
And I think the embassy and the consulates around the US have also said, if you are in trouble as a first resource, they can't always do lots, but if you are in dire straits and you do need some help, make sure you reach out to them, because they do staff that have been going through this whole process and been going to the office still when we've all sort of been sent home. So they are considered an essential service and they're there to help you. So worth checking in. On that, and I guess this all relates to the bigger picture of caps and getting back to Australia. And, there are, as you and I have discussed, there are lots of Facebook groups with Australians sort of stranded abroad and having a lot of trouble travelling because of the caps. What is the latest, and how are people getting home, or what tips do you have for people?
I suppose the most disappointing thing at the moment was that I was holding out last week for the next meeting of the state and federal government to come up with a clear kind of roadmap of how they're going to be able to increase the amount of Australians coming into the country. Unfortunately, the meeting that they had didn't actually go any way to satisfying this need that the Australians abroad really have at the moment for assistance in increasing the caps. And at this stage, the caps are still all exactly the same as what they have been for the last 2 months, I suppose. So that's really disappointing. I was really expecting and I was really hoping that they were going to increase the caps to make it easier for people to come home. Unfortunately, this has not taken place and we're pretty much in exactly where we were a week ago. So that's a little bit disappointing. So every week we're posting the caps on our blog. So I definitely recommend going in there and making yourself really aware of what the limitations are and what your main pain points are going to be on that journey home. So it's like a journey now to get home. It's a whole process. It's something that you have to start weeks and weeks in advance. But hopefully with our support, you and I, and also the support of the airlines and the support of the Australian government, hopefully all of those combined can provide these Australians that want to go home with some help and assistance and some clear facts. And there is a way to get home. So keep that at the back of your mind, that we are still getting, 4,000 Australians getting home every week. So
it's a really good point.
Stories out there.
Yeah. On that, and I know one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how do I know whether I'm going to be bumped? How do I know how many people are on my flight? And how can I effectively guarantee that I can get home when I want to? Do you have any tips for people around those kind of questions?
Yeah, I do. And I get this a lot, especially at the moment. I think that the key takeaway from all of this is not to focus specifically and put all your eggs in the one date that you have booked basket. And what I mean by that is that with the way that the caps are and knowing that they're not going to be changing in the foreseeable future, you have to have that plan B, plan C, plan D for your overall, mission to get home. I can definitely look at live availability for my clients and I can see how many seats are taken on that plane. It doesn't give me a manifest for that flight saying there are 43 people currently booked on that flight. It just shows me the availability of the booking classes, albeit in economy or business, and how many seats are actually left on the plane. It's not indicative of the actual count and the specific number of people on the plane. Now, what that means for people is that you can obviously call the airline and you'll get a representative from the airline that will be able to specifically tell you how many people are on that plane. But if you stick to the airlines that we are using a lot to get home, i.e. United and Delta, the rule of thumb is that if you've booked yourself on a certain date, there is a really good chance that you are going to be flying home on that date. Now, in the age of COVID, I can't stress enough that you need to have a little asterisk above that date and know that your specific date could change. And if you're onto that from the beginning and you understand that that date may change, it's going to really help you to plan ahead and be able to preempt any of those cancellations that could take place. I think the caps act as a guide. They shouldn't be your main focus, and it shouldn't be something that you then freak out about after you've purchased your ticket. I would want nothing less than people to have a nice experience and for things to be as easy as they possibly could on their journey home. I believe that focusing specifically on your flight date and the cap and how many people are on that plane is just going to cause you unnecessary stress. I would prefer people to be focused on a series of dates as their date to leave and go home, and to work together with the people that are going to be doing that, or whether that's the airline direct or whether that's your travel agent or, whether that's you've booked it online or whatever. Come up with a plan that if that date changes, it's not going to be the end of the world for you, because you'll be able to fly out 2 days after that or 3 days after that. So you've got to give yourself a wide runway to get home. You've got to have that net nice and wide.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people, do find that difficult at the moment because they might have hard dates to exit and things, but I think it's about planning as far in advance as you possibly can. And that leads me to, I know that you've even said in the past that about 4 weeks is kind of a good indication for planning your future travel. What are we looking at the moment? Like the availability for, and that's sort of the 3rd of October through the 17th of October, that 2-week period. What does that look like, and what sort of general advice for booking do you have for people at the moment?
Some good news there. So looking at availability and, good and bad news. So we can say it's mixed. So if you are planning to go home between now and the 9th of October, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, i.e. there's only business class seats available and it's going to cost you a mint. The good news is that when we look forward from the 9th of October, there's increasing availability, and that is going to be those dates that we should be focusing on now if you want to get home. So we'd take the 4-week kind of in advance and let's push it forward to about 6 weeks. You really need to be booking your flight a minimum of 6 weeks in advance at the moment, which is difficult, but that's just the reality that we're all living in at the moment.
Yep.
If I look at one-way flights from San Francisco to Sydney and also LA to Sydney after the 9th of October, there is good availability in economy at a decent price. It's not an amazing price, but it's a decent price. So I definitely recommend, if you are wanting to go home, to start booking those soon, because of the caps, they're going to sell out, and then we're in 4 weeks' time, we're going to be in exactly the same case, i.e., you cannot book a seat home within a 6-month leeway.
Good to know that we've got a plan. In terms of LA, one of the specific questions we had was around LAX to Sydney and just making sure that this route will remain open. Will there be more seats to book, or when? Do we know anything beyond? I mean, we just talked about the fact that caps are sort of in place for the foreseeable future. Is that your professional advice at the moment, is that we don't know, and it's sort of as long as we can see into the future, the caps will be in place and there'll be restrictions on flights?
Yeah. So the caps are going to be in place for the foreseeable future. That's my understanding. At the moment, currently, there's only one way to get home from LA to Sydney, and that's with Delta. The good news is that United are starting to add a few flights, and they already have done that for September. They have added some LA to Sydney flights just on a Tuesday, and then they've got a sprinkle of Thursdays throughout the month of September. These flights, however, are completely sold out now. There's no chance of getting on any of those LA to Sydney flights at the moment unless you want to go business class. However, again, as we move through October, United are actually bumping up those flights from LA to Sydney. So you're going to have a little bit more choice, and with more choice, the price is going to drop and the availability is going to increase. So my advice is, at the moment, after the 9th of October, you are going to be able to book a United flight from LA to Sydney, and they're operating, I think, 3 to 4 days a week. So that's really good news, and that is really helping with the availability. So they will sell out really quick, though. Current numbers, from what I've gathered, there are up to 100,000 Australians overseas at the moment wanting to come home. So if we've got a 4,000 person cap, you can imagine how long that's going to take to get through 100,000. That's many, 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 many weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. And that reiterates that, booking in advance as much as possible is definitely your strength at the moment. One of the questions, and this is my last question, is around the hotel quarantine and just understanding what I've had a lot of questions from people who might have had flights bumped all the way from the point where hotel quarantine was not charged, and it's being rebooked and rebooked and rebooked. Just in a sort of really quick, capture-y way, how is that determined? Is it something that people who rebook don't have to pay, or is there a sort of general guide that you're giving people?
It's a pretty simple, although harsh, rule, I suppose, or a system that they've come up with. The system that they've come up with is it's a blanket, everybody pays, regardless of whether you booked in December or whether you booked in August. Everyone that is entering the hotel quarantine system in Australia has to pay. Now, what happens is, after you check out, you're given the hotel invoice, and on that invoice is a link to that local state government's website, where you then go ahead providing evidence that you had booked prior to the embargo or the date that they said you have to start paying. And then you're able to upload that evidence and provide that to them to get the money that you paid the hotel back. So that's the system. I can understand why they did it that way. It makes it very difficult, especially when you've got a family of 3 or family of 4, family of 5. It becomes a huge expense, but that's just the rule of thumb of how it goes. So everybody pays. Then when you're checking out, on your invoice will be the link to that government website, where then you evidence that you'd booked prior to the cutoff period.
Okay, and that's so people will sort of have that all presented to them. They don't have to go in with all that evidence. You can sort of piece that together post.
Which makes it does make it difficult. For example, I spoke to a young man last week, and he doesn't have a credit card. He's financially stable, and he's got the financial means. But when I talked to him about the hotel quarantine, he was like, "How do I pay? I don't have a credit card." So that's definitely something that you need to work out before you get on that plane. You don't want to be, checking into the airport hotel and not have a way to secure that room for yourself. So whether you can borrow a credit card of someone or quickly apply for a credit card to use specifically for the quarantine, but credit cards at the moment are crucial to you being able to do that hotel quarantine.
So I understood, and I'm just from someone that I spoke to the other day, that you were getting the invoice, but you don't have to actually physically pay it at the end. But because the people that I've polled have not paid, so you've heard of people who have actually had to pay on the last day?
Yeah, I've heard of people. I suppose it might depend on the hotel that they're staying in or whatnot. But yeah, I have heard of people having to pay on checkout. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Josh, thank you as always. If anyone has any questions, you can go to americajosh.com/traveljosh and you can ask your questions and we can address them next week. But yeah, thank you again for taking the time and answering everyone's questions.
Thanks, guys. And thanks for all the positive feedback that we're getting on doing this. And if you have any questions or anything, hit me up. I'll do my very best to help, whether you booked with me or not. I'm here to help.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. See ya.